I watched this video where this young lady opens up about growing up with her father, Sweden's most notorious cannibal. Her stories are heartbreaking. It makes me feel so sorry for kids raised around parents like that.
My dad was very unpredictable. So he could go from being like very nice and funny to being like to just switch, and his eyes would go pitch black and he would become this monster out of nowhere.
Were you afraid of him?
Yeah. When he switched like that, I got very scared. My dad was very into horror films and, the devil, demons. He introduced that to me when I was very young, like 3 maybe. He started showing me horror movies like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Those are not that bad, but to a 3-year-old, they are. When I got a bit older, around 5, 6, he started to, I would call it brainwashing, because he made me believe things. He made me see things and believe things that wasn't real. We could lay in the bed in the dark, and I was just about to fall asleep, and he would go like, "Oh, Jamie, do you see the faces up in the ceiling?" And he would go on until I actually saw them. And that would make me so scared, and I would just put the duvet over my face and try to fall asleep. And he would like sit there and laugh. If I got scared, he laughed.
There's a link to the full interview in the description box below. Please check it out if you have the time. But interesting how her dad's eyes turned pitch black, huh? But anyway, this actually reminds me of an advice given by Father Reehil to a mother on educating the children about the times we're living in today. It's not really related to the cannibal, but because we're on the subject of children and parents, I thought it's a good idea to share this one with you.
Is you have to educate them, because the schools aren't doing it, and really a 10-minute homily on Sunday isn't doing it either. So you sit them down and say, there's a reality to this world. There is good and there is evil. God is good and all goodness comes from him. And evil, it personified, is Satan and his minions. And the battle is between that, from God and his angels against the demons and the devils. And we're in the middle of it. And so Jesus came into the world to set us free. He died for you so that you could have new life, but you have to choose it. And you have to lay this all out before them. Tell them they have a guardian angel. Tell them they can call on their angel. Teach them prayers to call on the Holy Spirit. Read them stories from the Bible of people that were in real battles, like Joshua, like Esther, like Jeremiah, Elijah battling the 450 pagan prophets. You have to integrate the faith into their life in a tangible way so they understand they're part of this battle. And they have to always choose what is good. And if they wind up choosing what is evil, if they wind up choosing the world, if they're continually following the Kardashians, they're going to be choosing hell at the end of life, and it's forever. And if you can impress that upon them as teenagers, they'll get it. And they have the intellect at that age to understand what you're saying. Not to frighten them, but to just make them aware. Everything, you go out into the world, you're going to be tempted every day to choose evil, but choose good. Pray your rosary as a family. Our Lady's promise, that's a guaranteed protection for those who pray the rosary as a family. So that's my recommendation. And then just put it into practice and you'll be fine.
And I'm genuinely curious to know what you think of this law that Father Reehil talked about during his March 11th Radio Maria show, Battle Ready. Listen to this.
There is an Israeli bill that several in the government are trying to pass into law. It was introduced in the Israeli Knesset, proposes penalties to anyone who attempts to publicly speak about Christ, including distributing material that promotes belief in Jesus Christ. And under the proposal, publishing or sharing content intended to encourage conversion will also be punished. The bill states that distributing messages supporting belief in Jesus through the internet, media, or email to persuade Israelis to convert would become a criminal offense. This was originally proposed in 2023. They're bringing it back a second time, trying to push it through. Well, let me just tell you something, Israel. If you pass this, you will have a holy war on your hands. So help me God. The God of heaven and earth will come down and crush you like the bug that you appear to be if you pass this law. The only thing that needs to be spread throughout the world is Jesus Christ and his message of the gospel. That's it. You missed the new covenant, and now you wallow in your own squalor. You're lucky you have America as a friend. But I tell you, if you try to pass this, you will no longer be a friend of America. And let's see how you do on your own. That's topic one. Topic two. Today in the news down in Florida, a priest, a Catholic priest, is facing $500,000 in fines for feeding homeless in this lawsuit that has been slandered against this man, Father Bob Caudill. So he's been feeding the homeless at All Saints Catholic Mission in Oakland Park for 12 years. 12 years. And recently they changed the zoning laws. So he's been getting fined $125 a day since 2014. And he's in trouble. This is a serious thing. They're not backing down. I hope the bishop there is coming to his defense. What is happening to the world when feeding homeless becomes a crime? You know, when promoting Jesus Christ is a crime. These are the days we live, people. Like, if you don't get it yet, wake up. This is all precursors to the coming Antichrist. And this is the kind of stuff he's going to be doing. You'll be fined for helping the poor. You're going to be fined and imprisoned for proclaiming Jesus Christ. It's already happening.
And on that note, after listening to that clip of Father Reehil, remember this one when it comes to the devil's game plan.
Remember, Satan's approach to deception is predictable. My mentor, Father Ramworth, repeated this many times in his works and in his preaching. He stated that Satan never changes his tactics. He's very predictable. But because he is very convincing, many people are swept away even though he never changes his game plan. And his game plan is to steal your soul for all eternity through smoke and mirrors deception. What does St. Paul say? He can dress himself up as a sheep in wolf's clothing. He can appear as an angel of light, having the odor of sanctity without the sanctity.
And time and again, I always took the opportunity to highlight the issue when it comes to young women creating OF accounts and began selling their photos and videos on that platform. And the numbers are staggering, millions of creators in fact. And it's partly due to the devil's deception.
Again, a lot of people think that, oh, I don't have to have a lot of followers. I can just jump on and do this in secret and I'll just make a bunch of money. Well, what happens with that is we see statistics like the average wage of an OnlyFans creator is $180 a month. And that's because so many people are jumping on thinking that they don't have to do anything. They post all of these pictures, they don't earn any money. And then that's actually on the internet forever. And you really can't get it down. In 2023 or 2021, in 2021, there was 2.1 million creators on OnlyFans, and only 300 of those 2.1 million made more than $1 million a year. So the margin is very low for people that are actually making a lot of money. So the realisticness, as I said, is you're going to jump on, you're going to see how competitive this is. You're going to post a bunch of really, really full-on content that you probably didn't want to do in the first place. You're not going to make a lot of money from it. And to get your account taken down is really difficult. It's not easy. And so then you're stuck with this online for forever, potentially. And so that's a reality that we need to understand. And again, it's because we're softly manipulated by social media to think that this is easy, this is a positive, and it's a get-rich-quick scheme.
Satan never changes his tactics. He's very predictable. But because he is very convincing, many people are swept away even though he never changes his game plan. And his game plan is to steal your soul for all eternity through smoke and mirrors deception.
And still on parenting and parenthood in general, that goes a long way in getting this kind of social issues under control. I'd like to share this clip of Father Martin's with you.
So friends, I'm called as an exorcist into many situations where a house may be demonized or a person is possessed, oppressed, or demonized in some form. In the vast majority of the situations I encounter, if the man in the situation, the husband, the father, for example, if he had acted on his authority and acted as the proper gatekeeper of his family, then it wouldn't have been necessary for me to be called in because the problem would have never begun. Life is all about relationships. We need to cultivate good ones and avoid destructive ones. Men often leave the relationship aspect of life to their wives. Because women are naturally relational, husbands often allow their wives to be the primary religious formator of their families, for example. In their communities, to give another example, when there is an advocacy needed, when, for example, the local school board, like happens so often today, wants to introduce a perverted curriculum into the programming, right? When they want to teach your kids crap, there are far more women that exercise an advocacy than men. Women are by far the ones that make noise. Where in heaven's name are the men? Friends, there's nothing wrong with women exercising advocacy, but the man was created, men were created to be the voice of authority in the family, in community, in the nation, in the world. The dominion of creation was given to a man. The woman was placed there to be the nurturer of creation. Problems occur when those roles get mixed up. What is a man's authority? What is a man's place within the family, within the community, within the nation, and so forth? Well, a man declares what is true from what is false, right? When you see a mother exercise that, it has an effect on children. At a certain point, that effect gets limited. But when dad declares what is true, what is false, you can see it in the kids. Man, authority has spoken. The father or a man, a father, a husband, sets limits on actions and behaviors, right? He exercises an authority by recognizing what is good and what is bad. And his affirmation is singularly unique, right? So when a mother praises a child, it has a marvelous effect. Mom is the nurturer. Mom is the one for whom, especially in younger children, they receive a sense of security by being loved. But as they get older, the voice of the father, when he affirms, is what they crave. Mom can affirm you, and yeah, it's lovely that mom did that, right? But when dad affirms, it's healing. It has staying power. It stops a kid, a young adult, even a grown man, dead in his tracks. There's an affirmation that comes from another man that is healing, and it's healing for both men and for both women, right? So declaring what is true from what is false, identifying good from evil, and affirming those under his care. That is the authority of men.
And on the issue of OF, I think it's worth sharing again with you this clip from my interview with Deacon Anthony last year.
The rise of something like OnlyFans has been pretty detrimental because it's kind of taken prostitution to the virtual level in a way that's easily monetizable, and it hasn't entirely taken away the stigma, but in some circles it's made it seem more almost respectable. Oh, I can pay for my college education with your OnlyFans. Or I've seen women online in different news articles and whatnot saying how they're able to provide for their families so well through OnlyFans. And what's happening ultimately, though, is they're engaged in a type of prostitution. They may not be having direct sex with their viewers. Some are, but they may not necessarily be. But what's going on is they're selling their bodies, they're selling their private person, so to speak. They're selling something, important and sacred, their sexuality, for monetary gain. And that's destructive to them. And that's destructive to the people who view this stuff and become addicted to it. I mean, ultimately, the reason that people are becoming millionaires off of OnlyFans is because pornography is addictive. Again, it may not be an addictive substance like heroin, but it fosters an addictive behavior, which is lust, running to fantasy as opposed to dealing with reality. And a lot of men become so hooked on this, they need to get the next high. And oftentimes, the next high has to be something different than what they saw before. They're always looking for variety. So very often, these women who are on OnlyFans, they get more and more extreme themselves. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I saw an article maybe a few months ago on a news site about some young woman in England who decided that she wanted to guess, outperform other women on OnlyFans and had some sort of crazy stunt where she apparently had 100 men line up to be with her at once over like a 24-hour period. And I mean, just reading about that was shocking. And apparently the article said that at the end of this, somebody filmed a documentary about this, but at the end of it, apparently she just broke down crying in tears because on a certain level, she was harmed by this and she knew she was harmed by this. But that platform and the money that comes with it, I think encourages the women and men involved to become more and more extreme. Because again, people who are ensnared by pornography are oftentimes looking for the next level, the next high, and they're looking for more variety, which again leads to more extreme situations and scenarios. So yeah, it's a horrible thing. I mean, ultimately, the people who are profiting off of this, those makers of pornography who are profiting, I think they're called creators on OnlyFans, they're profiting off of exploiting people's addictions. And of course, there are the big companies behind things like OnlyFans and other pornography sites who are making billions and billions of dollars off of exploiting people. It's a sad cycle all around. I think it's doing immeasurable damage to our society. I'll say one more thing about the pornography and masturbation. It's very possible for a person to be so enslaved to this they feel hopeless and they don't know how to stop. Oftentimes I encounter people who stop for a while and they try and they just can't, and they go back to it again and again and again, and after a while they feel hopeless and give up. What I've found is that one of the keys to succeeding in this is having some sort of accountability to another person. So I always urge people, if they're struggling with this addiction, to find maybe some friends they can talk to about it and hold each other accountable. But beyond that, I've known people who have had a lot of success with 12-step programs. There are 12-step programs for people who are addicted to pornography or people who are addicted to lust. And these programs are oftentimes a huge, huge help because the 12 steps are ultimately about surrendering to God. That's at the very core of the 12 steps is surrendering to God, which I think is at the core of Christian spirituality even. So very often the 12-step programs help a person to have a structured way of making this surrender to God, but also it connects them with other people who can hold them accountable, who they can work with. And for a lot of people, they need that accountability and they need that support offered by a 12-step program in order to break free from these addictions. And these days, back in the old days, if you wanted to go to a 12-step group, you had to find one in person. And while some 12-step groups are abundant, like every small town has an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, 12-step programs for people with sexual addictions or pornography addictions are harder to find. You find them in big cities, but small towns, you don't typically find that. But you can find these meetings online now through Zoom. Two of the programs I've heard of that have a lot of success, from what I've been told, are SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, and another one is SAL, which is SA Lifeline. And both of those programs are known to have helped a lot of people, probably thousands, if not more people, find freedom from these addictions. And if you look online, you can find these meetings in your local area. And if not, you can find Zoom meetings you can sign up for. And I would urge anyone to do that because oftentimes getting help through a 12-step program is the best way to break free from these addictive behaviors.
And just before we get to the end of this video, if you're still here watching this video, I really like to know what you think of this funeral director's story. Listen to this.
Have you ever had any ghostly experiences?
Oh, all the time.
What's the worst one?
The most memorable one, where I previously worked, there was a young chap came in who had taken his own life. And I was getting him ready and everything else. So I went in to check that he was okay. And I saw that his mouth was moving. But when I went closer, there was a lot of maggot movement in his mouth. So I had to get those out before his mum came in to visit. Because of the nature of where he ended his life, he was outside. So then I got him ready and I was waiting. And I was the only one in the office because everybody was out. And I heard footsteps on the carpet, which you would hear a lot actually there, and you didn't really take any notice of it. But then I had that. My hair was flicking out. So I don't get spooked easily anyway, because you don't. And I just turned around and I said, I haven't got time for this. So I suggest you get back in the room and wait for your mum. So I heard the steps go back and then I heard the door go.
That will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully all of you have learned something useful from this video. And remember, if you have any suggestion or feedback, please don't hesitate to let us know in the comments below. And if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left the link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching and may God bless you.